Welcome, everybody. This month, I'm going to be talking about workspaces and customizing them and all about that. Not maybe the most visually interesting topic, but I think one that often is neglected or ignored and kind of valuable for everybody. But before I get into it, I just wanted to give a shout out to the Vectorworks coffee break not concerts, coffee breaks. And these are shortish 1 hour presentations. They're open to everybody. Anybody can sign up for them. And they tend to cover one specific topic. I think Keith Ragsdale has been doing many of those, former Austinite and sometime attendee here at our Austin Vectorworks meetings. And then if you have a VSS, Vectorworks Service Select subscription, then you can view past coffee breaks on demand. But anybody, whether you're VSS or not, can join these live ones. And again, they tend to be sort of a little in-depth. So today was title blocks. All right, well, we're going to talk about workspaces. And what is a workspace? Well, you can see that on my screen, I've got some palettes and that are arranged in a particular way. Probably looks fairly familiar. But if I go here to the Tools menu in Vectorworks and go to my workspaces, you can see that I have a variety of workspaces that are available to me. Now, your list may look different than mine. I've got the Design Suite version of Vectorworks. So that includes Architect, Spotlight, Landmark, and of course, Fundamentals. So depending on which version of Vectorworks you have, you may see all or some of these, not necessarily all of them. And so for the longest time, I've been working on laptops. That's kind of my preferred work device. And so I tend to design workspaces for myself that are fairly compact and maximize the drawing area and minimize palette spaces. And you may want to do something that works better for you. Oh, by the way, if you're not muted, please mute yourself unless you have a question, in which case, of course, definitely unmute yourself, or I won't be able to hear the question. So, so if we look at these different workspaces, I'll just go ahead and switch over to Architect, and you'll see that things will take a moment, and then everything rearranges itself automatically. The palettes have the width that they have. The tool sets have the arrangement that they have, and you may even get different menus across the top and certainly different commands in those menus. So right out of the box, you're going to have a variety of workspaces to choose from. If you have Fundamentals, you'll probably only have the Fundamentals workspace. But if you have Architect, you'll have Architect, Fundamentals, and then the Architect BIM workspace, just slightly different. So there's a workspace editor, and that's what allows you to customize your workspaces. So let's go ahead and look at that. And you can see that when you click on that menu command, it's going to list all of the workspaces that you currently have access to. Now, you may be wondering, where do my workspaces live? So, for example, you may develop a workspace for your office and you want everybody to use the same workspace. I'm not quite sure why you would want to do that, but let's say you're a bit of a control freak like me. And so you can go ahead and reveal that workspace in Finder. And your workspaces are going to live in your workspace folder that ships with Vectorworks. That's where the standard workspaces live, right? But if you go to, let's close that, let's close all that, there we go. If you go to a custom workspace, so this one, for example, and I reveal that in Finder, you'll see that that actually is buried deep in your user library, which on the Mac, the library folder is typically invisible. And so you've got application support, Vectorworks, whatever version you're running, and then Workspaces. And here you go, there's where your custom workspace is. So once you develop a workspace, you can share it with other people, and they would need to put them in their user folder. So let's go ahead and see what my options are in terms of editing that workspace. So I'll go ahead and edit that. And so here's the workspace editor. You can see that you can rename your workspace. And there are three primary tabs here that I'm going to talk you through. There's menus, tools, and keys, right? So the menus themselves, right, what you would see across the top here next to Vectorworks, you notice that that Vectorworks menu is not editable, but your file, your edit, your view, your modify, all of that is here. Now, notice that you can create a new menu. So you're not limited to the standard menus. So if there's something that really makes sense to you to have as a menu item that doesn't fit these predefined categories, you can create a new menu. You just click on new menu and you just drag it over here. And it'll call it new menu. And then you can double click on it and you can go ahead and type, for example, favorites. But maybe you'll spell it right, unlike me, right? And so if I were to hit OK, then that menu would be there. Let me cancel this out. I'm actually going to duplicate this workspace so that I can just mess around with it and not worry about disturbing my own workspace. Let's go back here, create a new menu right after edit. I'll type favorites and hit OK. Yeah. So it doesn't like that because it wants me to put commands in it, which makes sense. So over here, I have a list of all of the potential menu names, right? And so in order to have a valid menu, I need to have some actual, commands in there. So what I typically do is I just go to show all, and then it'll list every single command that is available in the version of Vectorworks that I currently have. Right. So maybe in my favorites, I've got, I don't know, align distribute. That's a favorite of mine. And let's see, what's another one that I like to use a lot? Oh, I'm always looking at my classes, and I'm always looking at my layers. So that's going to be down here with the L's. All right, that's good enough for now. So I'll hit OK. It tells me that the workspace has been modified in my library folder under application support, Vectorworks 2024 Workspaces. And I'll hit OK. And I'll go ahead and click on that, and that will make this workspace active. And it takes a moment to rearrange. And sure enough, there's that new menu. It's got classes, layers, and align distribute. So I can create new menus with the Workspace editor. Let me go back to Tools and edit the current workspace. Just a shortcut that gets me back to this workspace here.
I'm sorry, where, how did you get to the in the upper left-hand corner? What were you clicking on to show your menu?
In the upper left corner, what was I clicking
Yeah, you were
on?
just up there to show your new menu, but I didn't see where the menu tab that you, is it a separate palette?
Oh, okay. It's a so I don't think that Zoom is showing you my menus,
Oh,
right? So you can't see vector file.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. So so let's see if I can, don't know. Well, let's go to let me see if I can go to full screen.
Well,
Are
does the
you
menu
seeing?
item just say favorites on it? Is that what it said?
Yeah. Are you
Okay.
seeing that?
Nope.
My full screen? Nope. Okay, well,
Don't worry
I
about it.
just,
As long as you tell me that it's what it said, it shows up as favorites, and I'll know what to look for. Thank you.
yep. Yeah, so maybe I can, let me do a new share here and just share my entire desktop. Maybe that'll work better. All right, so are you seeing now my menu bar?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. So that's what I
Thank
should
you.
have done. Apologies. So there you see, there's my new menu favorites with classes, layers, align, distribute. I'm not suggesting that you really should have a favorites menu. I just wanted to demonstrate. So back here under Tools, Workspaces, I'll go back to edit the current workspace. I'll have a change of heart and I'll just delete that favorites. So there's no right click here, there's no delete. I just highlight it, and what you can't see is that I'm hitting the delete key on my keyboard, and I'll delete it and everything in it, that menu and all of the commands below it. So oftentimes I'll have, won't be making many changes to, say, the file menu or the edit menu or the view menu, right? But what I might do is assign some keyboard shortcuts, and I'll get to that in a minute. So what I tend to find is, rather than trying to look at tools sort of in these categories, I mean, that might be helpful, particularly recent changes, and I'll talk about that as well in a moment. But rather than that, look at these tools that are sort of categorized in these menus: Cloud, Braceworks, Architect, and so forth. When I'm editing a workspace, what I find to be a little more useful is to reveal under all menus, which really is all commands, as I was showing you before. And that lists everything alphabetically. Or if I know that I want to tinker with my import and export functions, right, I can look at these different commands. Now, keep in mind that a command can occur multiple times within your same workspace, right? So I could have there's my align. I could have alignment here in my modify menu, or I could also, in addition to that, have it in that favorites menu that I just deleted. So the same command can appear multiple times within the same workspace. That's totally legit. And then when I have these menus here, right, you can see that there are submenus. So here's my zooming, right? But I could decide to rename that. Like I could um, uh, uh, call that zoom pan, for example, right? And then I could find a nudge command, for example. which is not here because there is no such thing. So that's probably a bad example. But if there was, if I wanted to add some things to this submenu, I could just find a command. Let me close that. Here's view. Here's all the different view options. So there's already fit to page area. Maybe I could do some, would be a good one to have here. Let's go to previous views. I could have previous view here and next view here, for example, right? So don't need to rename that, right? So I can go ahead and add commands to these submenus. And again, just simple process. I just find the command in the left window and I just manually drag it over. You get this little horizontal blue line with a dot, and that'll tell you sort of where it's landing. So if I want it to be, if I want create viewport to be right here at the top level of the view menu, there it is. But if I want to, I can move it into the zoom submenu, right? And move it around that way. I think fairly self-explanatory. And if I want to get rid of it, I just delete, delete, delete. And that's really how menus work. Now, I also have the ability to use the Workspace editor to edit my tools. So in Vectorworks 2024, there's now a basic tool set, which is a little bit different, and it's arranged like so. And then you've got your various tool sets for site planning, GIS, space planning, building shell, and so on and so forth. So you could just take all of your, say, 3D modeling tools and just grab this tool set and just drag it over. So now I've got two 3D modeling. I've got 3D modeling 2 because it's not going to let me have two of the same name, right? And it's already pre-populated with all of these different tools. Now, again, this is distinct from a command. The command is always up top from a pull-down menu, and the tools are in your palettes over to the side. So, so I can create a whole new tool set. I'll just go ahead and delete that. So maybe I don't like the visualization because that's, a little too general. So maybe I'll create a new tool set. So I'll just click here on new tool set, drag it into here, and I'll call this tool set rendering. It has this generic icon, but I can go ahead and create my own icon and replace that just with this image button there. And so in my rendering tool set, I might have, let's go over here to visualization. So I might have my render bitmap tool and my Renderworks camera tool. Right. Notice that again, I have this convention of the horizontal blue line with the blue dot at the left, and that tells me what level of that menu that tool is. And let's see what else. Well, there's a rendering tab right here. There's a Datasmith direct link, which I've never used, but that's okay. Right. And so I can go ahead and drag this render bitmap tool And if I move it slightly to the left, you see that I'm just moving it up in its order within that rendering menu. But as I drag it around, if I move slightly to the right here, you'll see that it is now a sub tool underneath the Renderworks camera. And so what that means is wherever you have these tool locations in a palette and you've got this little black triangle here in the bottom right-hand corner, obviously if you click on that, let's go ahead and save that. So here's my new rendering tool set that I just created. And it only has 2 tools in it, so there's not a lot I can do there. But if I click on that and hold it, right, then that will disclose any tools that I've stacked up behind this Renderworks camera. So for example, in my standard workspace, I've got the polyline, the freehand tool, and the spiral, all occupying the same space because, as I said, I like a really nice compact tool set. If I go to switch over to the architect workspace, you'll see that those tools are all individual tools within the palette, right? There's my polyline, there's my spiral, there's my freehand tool. So I've taken these 3 tools and collapsed them into a single spot on the palette for the sake of preserving screen real estate. Steve wants to know if there's a tool to filter. I don't think so. Yep, so I can, yep, so I can, if I'm in that, there's not a filter per se, but if I'm in this menu, right, and just highlight one of these options, I can type a letter and it will go to that letter, but it's only looking for commands. Go tools, all tools. So if I go here and I type dimension, yeah, so I can type DI and it'll give me to dimension, tape, distribution, die spring, and so forth. So I can sort of find the right letter, but I can't, there's not like an actual filter command.
So
Good
Francois,
question.
on the workspace editor for both menus and tools, on the right-hand side for menus and palettes, in menus, can you rearrange the order of the menus so that they appear differently? So file, edit, view, modify. Do those go up and down?
Yep. So I can say take my window and drag it up and put it next to edit, right?
Oh, cool.
Or next to view, or at the bottom here. Absolutely, I can.
And
I
the
can
same is
change the
true
order.
for the same is true for the tools and the palettes. If you move those around, it changes where the squares are in the palettes.
Correct.
Cool.
So if I'm looking at my basic tool set, for example, let's look at that, right? It's going to lay out in this particular way. And here it's useful to be editing the current workspace. Like I don't want to be in the architect workspace while editing my MacBook workspace because then I have no visual reference. So this way I can see how I've got this arranged, right? And so I've got my selection tool first, and then my pan tool, my flyover, my zoom. I can decide that I want zoom and selection to be right next to each other at the very top. And then pan and flyover makes sense because pan is kind of like 2D flyover in a way. I don't know. I'm just making this up, right? So I'll hit OK. And it's going to save that. And you'll see that over here as the order of where those locate has changed.
And so when you did the tool sets, you're able to create a new tool set with a new palette?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So there's that rendering tool set which I had moved up, right? So I can move those around, whatever I need to do. Like, you
So
know,
can I add to that list of the tool sets that you have there? Let's say
mm-hmm.
there's 12. Can I make a 13th or 14th palette and create my own palette of tools?
Yeah. I created rendering here. That's like, you know, I
Oh, I
made that
missed
up.
that.
There
You
isn't
did.
one.
I forgot how did you make that happen? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So I'll just go
Oh,
to
new
new
tool
tool
set. Never
set.
mind. I see it. Okay.
I'll just drag it over here, and I'll just under
Got
basics,
it.
I'll just
Got it.
have, favorites.
Sorry, I saw that now. Yep.
Yep. And so
All
I
right.
can just
Thanks.
take all of the tools that I know, like here's my 5 favorite tools, and I'll throw it in there so that I always know where to look. Not actually what I recommend that you do, but, and then again, there's the only, to delete it, you just highlight it and delete it. There's no warning. Hey, you're about to delete a tool set. There's no warning. So this one, it did, because I take that back, because it actually has tools inside of it, right? And this is the one that I, just created. That's actually kind of bogus. So if I just highlight the text, then it'll just rename it. So I don't want to do that. Just delete it and delete all the tools that are with it. So that is the first primary, most basic function of the workspace editor or of Workspaces, is that it allows you to define which commands you see, where you see them, which tools you see, and where you see them, right? But then the oops, something in the chat. Hold on. So Steve wants to know. I don't know if you guys can see my chat. Maybe you can. Steve wants to know if we can, if we want to revert to the icons for previous versions of Vectorworks. Yeah, but you'd need to figure out a way to extract those icons. So you'll notice that under, if I highlight the visualization palette, right, I have an option to change that image. But if I highlight the flyover tool, I have no option to change that image. So I can create custom images for the overall tool sets, but not for the individual tools, if that makes sense.
Yeah, those are the ones that are bothering me the most.
These right here?
The tool set.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I recommend that you do, Steve, is that you just open up, minicad 7, or whatever rocks your world, let's say Vectorworks 2023, and just take a screenshot of your tool palettes.
I don't remember what the old 3D modeling icon was, but I never find this one. I'm always like, where the hell is the modeling?
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah, I take some getting used to. And so just go to 2023, pull up your tool set, take a screenshot, save that as a JPEG or whatever, and then clip them all out from each other, and then name them so that when you click on image where to go, and then you can customize it.
Oh.
All right, so you can use the workspace editor to modify what commands you see, where you see them, what tools you see, and where you see them. That's reasonably important for you to have a layout that is logical and makes sense to you, particularly if you're a new Vectorworks user and you're migrating from some other software. It might be nice to have things arranged in a way that's a little more familiar. Though I find the workspace editor is esoteric enough that by the time people are ready to edit their workspaces, by then, you've been using Vectorworks for a while, and so might not be that important to sort of get something that's familiar to you from other programs. So let's see. All right, but probably a more important function in my mind is to create keyboard shortcuts. I'm a huge proponent of keyboard shortcuts. And so the way that works is I'll start with the menus. So let's go to modify, and there's align. Now I'm going to cancel here, and I'm going to go back to the workspace editor, and I'm just going to peek at the architect workspace. I'm not going to make any changes to it. And under modify, under align, you'll see that align to grid is command and the minus key. Align distribute is command and the equal sign. Align distribute 3D is command shift plus the equal sign. And align distribute leader lines has no keyboard shortcut. Right. So in fact, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do a little screenshot of this just to remind us. And I will save that to my clipboard. I'll hit cancel, hit done, and I'll paste. So I just pasted that screenshot, resize it. All right, so that's what things look like in Architect out of the box. Now, I find align to grid with a keyboard shortcut to be extremely problematic because you can have a bunch of objects selected, you inadvertently hit command minus, which maybe you don't even realize it, and now everything will align to your grid. So here's your grid snap. Currently, my grid is set to 1 inch, but I might have my grid set to 1/8 of an inch, right? And so things might just, if I align to grid, things may just shift just a tiny little bit, unbeknownst to me. And now I go back a few days later and things aren't where I expect them to be, dimensions are off, and so on and so forth. So I'm very uncomfortable with align to grid having a keyboard shortcut. I want to make using align to grid not necessarily difficult, but I want that to be a very deliberate choice on the user's part. On the other hand, align distribute leader lines for callouts is something that, I mean, I do all the time when I'm annotating drawings. So let's go back to the workspace editor. And let's look at the view. Sorry, modify align. So you can see that what I've done is I've eliminated the keyboard shortcut for align to grid. You just click over here or click right there, and there was a minus sign there, and I just deleted it. And so now it no longer has a keyboard shortcut. Now I can give it back and put the minus sign there, but it's telling me that I'm already using this by the align distribute leader lines. In other words, what I did is I took the keyboard shortcut for align to grid and I assigned it to align distribute leader lines. So I can go back and give it to align to grid, so hit yes. And so obviously that takes it away from leader lines. Align distribute, I'm not sure what happened there, but I want to go ahead and make that the equal sign. That got taken away somewhere along the line. And so let's go ahead and give that back to align to grid or align distribute leader lines. So there you go. So align distribute leader lines gets its own shortcut. Align distribute and align distribute 3D. So I've just rearranged what shortcuts are given to these standard menu commands, right? And you'll notice that with the menu commands, there's always going to be a modifier key. So it'll always be at least command But then eventually you're going to run out of keyboard, right? You're going to have your 26 letters and your 10 numbers and, you know, a few other keys. And after, you know, after 40, 45 keys, you no longer have enough shortcuts to assign to things. And so that's when you have the option of assigning a keyboard command that is not just the command key plus whatever modifier key. So in the case of align distribute, command equal, but you can make command shift or even command option shift or command option. So it's always at least command plus a keystroke, but it could be command plus the option plus the keystroke, command plus shift plus the keystroke, command plus option plus shift plus the keystroke. And of course, it kind of makes sense for you to have the same modifier keys for similar commands, right? So align distribute is command equal sign, and align distribute 3D is command shift equal sign, because one's 3D and one's 2D. And so, you know, there are a variety of keyboard shortcuts that I've assigned to these things based on sort of years of usage. And, you know, there ends up being quite a few of them. So, you know, add surface, clip surface, those get keyboard shortcuts. Compose, those get keyboard shortcuts. And after a while, you just kind of, your fingers sort of remember, you develop a muscle memory. And so it's just much more efficient to be able to assign a keyboard shortcut, particularly for something that you use constantly, than to have to drag your mouse over to the menu, find that command, and execute it. So I highly recommend that you think about your keyboard shortcuts, that you either look at what those keyboard shortcuts already are in your standard workspace, and that you know, modify them if you feel like that's important. And again, with menus, there's always going to be a modifier key. So let me see what the chat says here real quick. So Bill wants to know if there's a way to maintain a workspace that is the Vectorworks default. Yeah, it just ships, and with Vectorworks, Bill, I'm not sure I understand your question. It's
in other words, I know there's an out of the box arrangement of everything we've just discussed.
right.
And so that would be like my basis. I could modify that one, or I guess I could just save that as the default space and create my own workspace after that. Because I might want to always, like you said, go back to refer to a previous workspace. And in my case, I'd be talking about the default Vectorworks architect workspace.
Right. So I can edit the current workspace, but you know, I can just go to these workspaces, and that is in fact what I recommend that you do, is that you go to the workspace and you duplicate it, and you call it, you know, go ahead and edit that and
Just add your
rename it, you
initials to
know,
it.
my architect.
So just add your initials to it.
Yeah, or whatever. I mean, or your office initials, or yeah, whatever you want. And in fact, you can see that when I created a duplicate of that workspace, right, it moved it from the application folder to the user folder, where I showed you before. So back to my workspace. Delete that. Delete that while I'm at it. Back and edit this, right? So tools also have keyboard shortcuts, right? So in the basic tools, notice these don't have modifier keys. At least they don't have the command key, because that command key is reserved for menu commands, right? So if I just tap the X key, I get the selection handle, the selection tool. If I tap the V key, I get the visibility tool. C is zoom in. Option V is zoom out. The pan tool is H. The move page tool, could be a dangerous tool. So you notice I got rid of its keyboard shortcut if it had one. Fly over, walkthrough tool, and so on and so forth. So in some cases, I've added some to these. Frankly, I don't remember because I've migrated these, for so long. I'm pretty sure that 2D polygon is no longer 7. It was ages and ages ago, and I think at some point Vectorworks changed it in the standard architect or fundamentals workspace to a different keyboard shortcut. Old dogs, new tricks, blah, blah, blah. I just kept it the way it is, right? So for me, M is mirror, and equal is the reshape tool. It's the opposite for the standard workspace, or at least equal is the mirror tool. I don't know what the reshape is. Right, and so connect combine is kind of like a join command, so I make that keyboard J. Fillet is L, chamfer is Command L, and so on and so forth. So whenever I want to, add a keyboard shortcut to something, like marionette, I just go over here, and if I hit M, it's going to tell me that it's already assigned to mirror. So do I want to reassign it to marionette? No, but maybe I want Option M assigned to marionette. And it lets me do that. In other words, I haven't already assigned that Option M to something else. There's the texture paint, or the texture tool, rather. I said command earlier. So T is already set by SmartPoint. No, I don't want to do that, but I might do Option T, right? And so texture will now be Option T. Oh, keep hitting that. It's very annoying. So again, I can assign keyboard shortcuts here, and Vectorworks won't ever let me assign the same keyboard shortcut to 2 different tools. Now, sometimes tools might show up in multiple places, right? So you could have the same tool be in your dims and notes command, dims and notes tool set rather, and also be in your basic tool set, for example. So that's okay. That's not a problem. So adding your keyboard shortcuts to your tools and to your menus, very useful. Now I have another little tip for you, and that is if you're using, but before I do, let me check the chat because, yeah. So how I would share a keyboard, a workspace between different people, or from computer to computer. So let's say you customize your workspace for your work computer, and then, for you've got to do some work at home this weekend, and you'd like to have the same workspace on your laptop at home or whatever. You just need to highlight the workspace that you like, and you can reveal it in Finder. It'll open it up right here. It'll be in your user folder, so you note what the path is, and you just take that same file, email it to yourself, and put it in the same place on your other computer. All right, so back to editing. So one of the things that I like about having an extended keyboard is the numeric keypad over to the left. So let's go ahead and make sure that, cancel that. Here's my object info palette. Make sure that that is, yep, that's on the layer plane. So, if you have a numeric keyboard, keypad off to the right, an extended keyboard with a numeric keypad on the right, then the 3 key is the lower right isometric, and the 1 key is the lower left, and the 2 key is your front. So probably better if I actually make something that's three-dimensional, huh? All right, so there's my lower left or lower right, lower left, front, side, top, not top plan, but just a wireframe top, rear, right, rear, left, rear, rear ISO, and so forth. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can imagine it's as if your model was sort of parked on the 5 key on your numeric keypad, and the 6, which is to the right of the 5, that gives you the right view, and the 4 that's to the left of the 5, that gives you the left view, and the 2 that's below the 5 gives you the front view, right? So it's all sort of relative to that. And that's a lot nicer in my mind than finding the standard view menu, wherever the heck that is, up here, and then pulling down the menu that you want, right? So love having an extended keyboard. Unfortunately, I also mentioned to you that I almost always use a laptop, which does not have an extended keyboard. So what I've done in my workspace is workspace editor. Edit my current workspace. So under the view menu, under standard views, I've assigned these custom keyboard shortcuts. Well, top plan is always 5, right? And so if you happen to be looking at your keyboard right now, I can't display my keyboard on Zoom, obviously, but if you happen to be looking at your keyboard, you can see that 7, 8, 9, below 7, 8, 9 are the U, the I, and the O keys. And below those are the J, the K, and the L keys. And obviously, because the keyboard is deliberately offset, those keys are not directly below them. So JKL on the basic keyboard corresponds to 1, 2, and 3. UIO corresponds to 4, 5, and 6. Years ago, Apple had a function key and a silkscreen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the JKL UIO respectively, and so that you could use the function key to use the 7, 8, 9 UIO and JKL keys as a kind of a built-in numeric keypad. And of course, in its wisdom, Cupertino eliminated features because that's what they do. So years ago, I lost that feature, which made me very sad because I used that all day long looking at my models. And then it occurred to me, it took a while because I'm a little slow in the uptake, but it occurred to me that I could assign keyboard shortcuts to my standard views, which is what I've done. And if you look at those carefully, you can see that the left keyboard shortcut is the U key, right? Because that corresponds to 4 on the numeric keypad, which is left. So you know, J, K, L, these are not mnemonics in terms of like, well, J is your lower left view or whatever. They just correspond to sort of the geometrical relationship of diagonal views, right and left views, front and back views. I don't know if that's a clear explanation. My point is you can do some cool things with your keyboard shortcuts to give you a little bit of extra capabilities. And so you'll notice I didn't even know where the pull down menu is for standard views. I might even have eliminated it or abbreviated it because I'm always using these keyboard shortcuts to get views of my model. All right, is that all clear?
Yes.
So that's kind of my workaround for, you know, Apple saving 13 cents in the production of their $3,000 laptops by eliminating the silk screening on the UIO JKL keys. so annoying. So those are tools, and then there are menus. I can't believe it's been almost an hour. that there's this much to talk about in the Workspace editor. I thought this would be like a 20-minute thing. But then there's also the special keys tab, right? And so this is where you can assign your keyboard shortcuts to your snaps. Now I'm still used to the snap keys for when the snaps palette was a floating palette. So I may need to revisit that someday and assign new keyboard shortcuts to those. But again, these don't have modifiers. It's just A gives you your snap grid, Q snap to object, and so on. And then I don't know if you've noticed, but if you tap the Y key, you'll get these little floating screen hints. The G key sets your datum. The Z is for your snap loop. The B is for your X-ray mode. The tilde key or the grave accent is suspend snapping. All of that, that's all assigned on this special keys. And then there's your mode groups. So I don't know if anybody or many of you are familiar with that, but you'll notice, for example, here outside the Workspace editor, up in this left corner, currently the rectangle tool is selected because I just drew a rectangle and extruded it to demonstrate the standard views shortcuts, right? And so in the rectangle tool, the first mode is to draw a rectangle diagonally by opposite corners, or the second mode is to draw a rectangle by center and then corner, or then by midpoint and corner, and then the fourth mode is to draw a rectangle by 3 points for a rotated rectangle, essentially. And then you've got your option to extrude rectangles immediately upon drawing them, and then your option to combine or clip extrusions, right? So we talked about that in a meeting or two ago when we were doing some freeform sketch modeling, those two modes. So if you look carefully, you'll notice that there's a little bit of a break between the first four tools here and or modes rather, and then this other mode, and then there's another little break between that one and the other one. So the U key will always toggle you through the first set of modes within a tool, and the I key will toggle you through the second set, if there is one, which usually there is, and the O key will toggle you through the third set, if there is one, and if there's a fourth set, the P key will toggle you through that, and a fifth set, the left bracket, and a sixth set, the right bracket, and there are no tools with 7 sets of modes. And that's all starting, if you look down at your keyboard, if that's all starting at the U key, and then it's just moving left to right across your keyboard. So on the keyboard, the next key over from U is I, then O, then P, and so forth. Assuming, of course, you're using a QWERTY keyboard, which I think probably 99% of us are. So, so let's find a tool, like here's my dimension tool, right? And so I'm just tapping the U key and toggling through these different modes. And then if I want to go to the settings, I just tap the I key and it takes me to this setting over here, right? For example, if I want to use my polyline tool, the U key toggles me through that first set, and the I key turns off the second mode or toggles the second mode. The O key toggles the third mode, and the P key will immediately give me into the settings for the fillet mode, right? Which is this fourth mode here. So back to the Workspace editor. I can define all that up here under my mode groups. That's what that.
Can you add in other words, we have 6 and that's it. Can you how they're arranged in the upper left-hand corner in terms of where the spaces are, that what's in them and how where the spaces are between the boxes is not customizable. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, the modes are what they are. You can't move those around. You can't, lump them together in different sets. That's designed by the mothership, and you don't get to say.
All right.
All right, well, there's a couple of other things to point out here that may be a little less obvious. And probably the last main thing I want to touch on today are context menus, which many of us don't use. So if I'm just sort of tooling around here in Vectorworks and I don't have an object underneath my cursor, let's switch over to my cursor. I don't have an object underneath my cursor. If I click and drag, I just get, a selection marquee. Sure, we're all very familiar with that. If I right click, I get this little context menu that pops up. It allows me to repeat a recent command. It lists all of my recent commands. I can activate a particular class or layer. I can force select, right? There's some things that I can do that are document specific by right-clicking onto empty space. That's it's called the document context menu. And so for example, under smart options display, right, here are my smart options that are displaying there. If on the other hand, I'm over an object and I right click, then I get a different context menu. And this is my object context menu. So some of the things are the same, but then I have some different options that are not document specific, like sending the object to front or sending it to back or locking it or unlocking it or editing it or getting its properties, right? So for example, a common one might be if I just hover and click over this line, is to select connected objects. And then it selects all the objects that are connected to that one. Now, let's go to the Architect Workspace. So if you look on the Architect Workspace, I don't think select connected objects is listed here. And that's because I very cleverly added it to my workspace. So you'll see under menus here, you have two menus at the bottom that I had deliberately avoided talking about, which are your document context and your object context that I just showed you. So you can see that I just added select connected objects. I just found it over here. There it is. And I just, dragged it over there. I don't need it twice. So fit walls to objects, for example, I'm pretty sure I added that. Maybe I didn't. So you can customize your object context and your document context menus with commands, right? And that's really quite powerful. So activate layer scale. I think I might have added that one. I'm not sure, right? If you want to change the scale of a document, you could add the layer scale here in your view bar. But if you don't have it in your view bar, because you deselected it here, whatever. Changing the scale of this design layer 1 involves going to the organization palette, editing the layer, clicking on the scale button, and it's a multi-step process. Or I can activate layer scale and go right to it. So the context menus are really potentially quite powerful, and something that you might want to consider instead of creating like a favorites menu up here is adding 2, 3, 4, 5, don't overwhelm yourself, commands to your context menus that you tend to find yourself using an awful lot. So that's my last little spiel there. Well, I think there's one more actually. Yeah, there's 2 more things I need to talk about. So sorry, not quite done yet. So under Workspaces, for my tools, there's something else. Oh, I know what I want. I want to talk about the migration manager. So if you customize your workspace, this will be a good place to end. If you customize your workspace, you're going to start at, obviously adding keyboard shortcuts and so forth, and changing where things are. And you may be tempted, it's probably a big time saver for you to migrate that workspace from version to version of Vectorworks. So if you just recently adopted Vectorworks 2024, you might want to migrate your Vectorworks 2023 workspace. So there's a migration manager. When you first install 2024, it automatically prompts you to do this. But if you don't do it at the time, you can always go back later and just go to your migration manager, which is under tools. And so you can browse an earlier version of Vectorworks in your user folder, not the Vectorworks application itself, but the application support, which is in your library. So even if you've deleted Vectorworks 2022, chances are good that you still have the Vectorworks 2022, right? Mine goes all the way back to 2014. So I can go to 2022, for example, and hit next. And I can choose to migrate nothing except my workspace, and it'll list all of the workspaces that are there. There's my trusty MacBook workspace. So I'll hit next, and it'll ask me if I want to keep all of my menu commands and tools automatically. So I want to go ahead and keep my customized snapping keys. I haven't actually customized them, but it'll ask me if I want to add new menu items. And that's really important because obviously there are going to be new features in 2024 that were not there in 2022. And so I don't want to keep using 2022 tools in 2024. Otherwise, why bother being in 2024, right? So you want to go ahead and have Vectorworks automatically place these new commands in a new menu and new tools in a new tools tool set. And then you probably want to remove legacy tools and menu commands automatically, and then hit next. And migrate, it takes a second. And you're done. And so now, if we go to our workspaces, you can see that it's got a MacBook migrated workspace. That's the one we just created. Let's edit that. And you'll see that sure enough, there is a menu called New. And it's got all these new commands. And so I can put them in the appropriate place under the old schema. And under tool sets, there's new tools. So here's all the new tools that came up since 2022, right? And so I can then move those tools into the appropriate tool set. So keep in mind that the migration manager, if you have a heavily customized workspace, can be your friend. And at a certain point, it might be wise, as Bill suggested earlier, to just start with the architect or whatever industry workspace works best for you, and go back and customize it to suit you, so that you don't miss out on any of the new features. It's a pain. It'll take you a couple of hours, but in the long run, it's probably worth it. I keep thinking of more things to talk about. So one of the things that you can do, let's say you want to see what all the shortcuts are for Architect, there's an export button. And so it will allow you to export that Architect workspace to, say, your desktop. And now we're done. There it is, Architect workspace. There's my text file. And so it's created a text file, which is quite long. And it shows you what all the commands are and what all the keyboard shortcuts are for that particular workspace. Now, back in the very old days, Vectorworks used to have in the manual a little graphic keyboard that showed you graphically what all your keyboard shortcuts were. And a few years ago, they stopped doing that. Well, several years ago, they stopped doing that because there were just too many commands to possibly be able to show. But I went ahead and recreated that. And so at some point when I had way too much time on my hands, you can see these are still the old pre-2024 icons. So I created this symbol of a keyboard, and then I just had all of the icons that I just took screenshots and just laid them out on a design layer. And then I went back and did tiny little viewports of each icon one at a time. And just went ahead and put those on these keys. So this is actually just a little, oh my goodness, this was so long ago that these are layer links. They're not even viewports. My goodness. So anyway, I'm perfectly happy to send this to anybody who wants it. If you want to edit it on your own, and you can print it out and have this handy dandy reference, so that you can remember where you put your keyboard shortcuts, or share those with somebody. I think I've covered everything. There's probably a couple of things in the chat.
Any chance that Vectorworks will reintroduce that keyboard graphic again?
I have no idea. I seriously doubt it, but maybe you could always make that request. And the more people who upvote your request, the likelier it is that they will do that. So there's the somebody help me out. There's the roadmap webpage on the Vectorworks site where people can make requests and see what new technologies are upcoming. Or I could just email you this file and you could just spend a Saturday afternoon tinkering with it. Any questions for anybody else?
I've got one kind of off topic.
Okay.
So can you go to your fasteners tool set for a minute?
Sure.
And pick bolt.
Okay. That's a roller chain. You probably want my fasteners. There we go. Okay,
So
here's my,
yeah, how come there's not a like a screw and a nail in all these? I mean, just the simplest thing. I've never seen.
oh man. I don't know. Have you looked in the detail?
Yeah. Oh, there they are. Maybe I have an older version, but I don't remember seeing the screws there.
There's a wood screw.
Okay. Well, I guess I don't have, maybe I don't have that in my version or something. Or it's hidden.
Possible. Let's go. Let me switch over. What version are you using? Fundamentals, Architect?
23 Architect.
Architect.
Yeah.
I go to my Architect workspace. I'm in the design suite, so there may be some tools there that are not. So let's go look at detailing. Yep. Architect has metal sheet screw. I don't know if there's a nail tool. You can have it in 2D or 3D.
Okay. Well, I'll keep looking for it then.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay, everybody. I think I'm pretty much exhausted this one. There may be a couple of things that I've forgotten. And as usual, thanks for attending. I'll post this on YouTube and see you next time. And, shoot me an email, or if you want a copy of this file, happy to throw it at you.
That was very helpful, and it's something I know it's in the background, but I never get around to really going to customizing it, and I realize I should. So it's easy to do. So
yeah, I mean, to be frank, it can be a little tedious, but it's really worth it. And honestly, you don't need to. I think I've said before, I'm a huge proponent of the 90-10 rule, or 80-20, or whatever the mix is. Like, the first 10% effort generally yields 90% of the benefit, and then to get that last 10% of benefit, you're going to need to put in 90% of your effort. So this is probably what I'm showing on screen is probably a good example of the
yeah,
the 90% effort. It's a little over the top. I could have just put in text blocks and just named the tools, and that'd be good enough. But I had to geek out on it. But even if you just figure out, like, what are the 10 tools that I use most often, and assign keyboard shortcuts to them, or familiarize yourself with the keyboard shortcuts that are already there, and just a few little tweaks to your workspace, or just familiarizing yourself with your workspace, I think are going to make a huge difference in your productivity. Like, this whole thing of being able for me to pop around in my standard views in my own workspace is like, I use that all day long.
mm-hmm.
So, all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and see you next time.
Appreciate it. See you next time.
Thanks, Francois.
Bye. Take
Bye,
care.
everybody.